Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk just a little bit about postpartum healing. So I talked kind of a little bit in my last video about wanting to go over more on my experience with bringing Ronan home. Ronan is my son. Sorry, I'm grabbing some notes here. Ronan is my son. He is 4 months old. He's amazing. He has colic. He's getting a lot better. That's my dog, Callie. But, so I just wanted to talk about kind of postpartum for me. So when I gave birth, I wanted to do it all natural, no epidural, no nothing if I could help it. But it was very dramatic, I like to say, because it was a lot harder. I just had this intense pain from getting my membrane sweep 3 days before I actually went into labor, which I think I've talked about in a video here somewhere. So if I'm like reiterating, I'm sorry, but so I was in massive pain there, so I had to get the epidural, and then I also had to get Pitocin because I wasn't dilating. And then once they put me on the Pitocin, my contractions got irregular, so they took me off, and then they put me back on because my water broke. When I got to the hospital, they wanted to send me home, but I knew something was up, so I was like, let's just wait 2 hours, see what happens. And as soon as the nurse walked out, my water broke. She came back in. After your water breaks, they only have a certain amount of time to get the baby out before there's no more amniotic fluid. And for me, it wasn't like a trickle, it was just like a constant like flow of amniotic fluid coming out. So I wasn't dilating, they had to put me on Pitocin, and like I ended up getting the epidural. It stopped working twice, but overall it was fairly okay, you know, as far as pain goes. And so fast forward 20 some odd hours, Ronan's born, and I noticed that my feet were just insanely itchy, and I was like, that's just a little weird. So I look, and sure as shit, I'm having an allergic reaction to something, but I didn't really think about it, and then it started to show up on my hands bad. And so I was like, what the fuck? And I couldn't stop itching. I just like hoped it would go away. And then I brought the nurses in, and they thought it was chickenpox, they thought it was shingles. Then I was like, no, I'm just having an allergic reaction. And then they finally agreed with me that yes, it is just an allergic reaction. So they gave me cortisol cream, right? No, I don't know. I forget what it's called. It's that cream that you put on itchy shit, and that did literally nothing, because what they had at the hospital is has less of the medication than you can buy on the shelves. And I had already, for my pups rash, I had already had that cortisone cream. Cortisone, that sounds better, I don't know, you know, one of those. And so I was using that, it just wasn't doing anything, and so they gave me a high dose of Benadryl, which not only made me sleepy but made Ronan sleepy. He was already jaundiced, so you know, that sucked. But that only helped the symptoms of the rash, because it just kept getting worse. And of course, I don't like medication of any sort unless absolutely necessary. So I tried to just, you know, muscle through whatever I was going through when I came home. And I talked about this at one point in my video, that my mom got me Dead Sea soap, and I did witch hazel on them. Like, it was terrible, you guys. Like, I can't even explain. So that was like my first introduction to postpartum. Was actually 20% of women have postpartum hives. They don't know what triggers it really, but there is a protein in your body that is released during postpartum that your body, some women's bodies just can't handle. So it causes an allergic reaction. And so I was managing that. I ended up having to ask them to prescribe me steroids just so I could get it the fuck off of me, because it was literally all over my feet, all over my ankles, all over my hands. Like, my hands felt like fucking crocodiles or something. Like, it was so bad. It was on my legs, it was now on my arms. Like, it was terrible. I was still dealing with the pups rash. Like, it was terrible. If you don't know what pups rash is, when you're pregnant and you have stretch marks, it's a rash that goes in your stretch marks. So, you know, good things. So that was my first thing with postpartum. I had a 2nd-degree tear. Ronan had a massive fucking head. So I had a 2nd-degree tear. So I, again, still thought I was Superwoman. And I was trying to do all the things and not ask for help. And finally my mom had to yell at me. But so I was in so much pain, I couldn't sit. Like, it was just miserable because I was trying to do all the things. You're swollen. I have stitches. Like, I'm beat the fuck up from having a baby. And so my whole vagina just fucking hurt. And so obviously that's another fun thing. I thought I had the best son in the world because he slept so much and he was just doing great. He had a lot of trouble breastfeeding. And that's another thing, is there's no education for breastfeeding. They say, oh yes, breastfeed because it's what's best for the baby. But they don't fucking tell you how. They tell you, and the fucking pediatrician comes into my room this next morning, I think. Yeah, because I had Ronan at 5. So the next morning he comes in and he's like, here's your magic numbers. Like, you want to breastfeed for at least 15 minutes every 2 hours, right? And I was like, that's great. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing though. And so luckily my nurse was a lactation consultant, but Ronan was just having such a hard time latching and he was refusing. So she ended up giving me a nipple shield that in turn was way too big. So yeah, I thought I had a great son, but it turns out he was just extremely dehydrated. That was fun. So I had to take my 4-day-old to the ER, where they proceeded to try to give a 4-day-old an IV, but all of their needles were bigger than his vein. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in the ER bed with my son, trying to calm him down and just like hold him down while pumping at the same time so that he could have something to eat. And we're syringe feeding him breast milk, and finally he starts to come to a little bit. They tell us the only way to hydrate him is through his gut. Go get formula. It doesn't have to be forever, but just so that you can get him hydrated, to get the jaundice to go away and the bilirubin to go away, he has to start pooping. He hadn't pooped in 4 days. And so my boyfriend went to the store, got us the best stuff you could buy there, and came home. We made formula, syringe fed him formula. He pooped. We were on the up and up. But from there, he got colic. So that is who my son is. So another fun thing with postpartum was dealing with like the shame and the guilt over the formula, not being able to breastfeed exclusively. It's been 4 months, you'd think I'd be over it. So I continued to try to breastfeed and I was literally driving myself insane. He was constantly on the breast for over 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes more, always still wanting to be on, always still hungry. And everyone's like, oh, he's cluster feeding. And I'm like, oh, something's wrong. Like, I'm very intuitive, I guess. Like, I know when things are wrong. And so we thought he had a pretty severe jaw click, So I was like, okay, let's take him to a TMJ specialist. Like, basically, she's gonna like look at his whole shit, and like basically she just poked and prodded at him and charged us a retarded amount of money. And you know, we went home and he seemed to get worse. So I don't think in these moments I was really thinking about anything other than helping my son, right? And so Corey is the most amazing partner, support system, and honest person in my life. So after a few nights of him just watching me struggle and get upset because I couldn't get Ronan to latch, or we were just up for hours upon hours upon hours, and he just looked at me and was like, we had conversations for 4 days, and finally he's like, Jess, I cannot watch you go insane and go crazy, and you know, Ronan's hungry, just give him a bottle. Because I was refusing a bottle, we were syringe feeding so that I could still try to breastfeed and all the things, and finally I just broke down and I said, okay. And everybody was happy. So there's so much guilt and shame around it. I'm not sure why. You know, I think because they're like, oh, it's natural, right? Like, you should, everybody involved should just know what to do, and that's, your body makes this perfect milk for your baby, and all that's great and dandy, but it's a natural thing. The baby has no idea what to do. They've never done it. They've been in the womb, you know, they don't know. And I sure shit didn't know what to do and how to cope, and I couldn't afford a lactation consultant, which I might have been able to, but it's also a pandemic, so it's hard to get those resources right now because your hospitals are flooded. So if your insurance covers your hospital ones, then that's going to just be really hard for them to step away. And then the other one was either in-home or in clinic, and it was just like a whole, like, I don't want to leave the house, I'm in so much pain, I don't really feel comfortable with her coming to my house. Like, it was just like a whole thing. So we struggled with that. We finally were like, okay, we're gonna formula feed and breastfeed. He did a very, very good job doing both. My friend had come over and showed me how to breastfeed correctly. She's not a lactation consultant, but she had a child herself, and so she taught me how to breastfeed, how to get him to latch, and all these things. And so we did both for a while. Then we went to my mom's in Arkansas when he was around 10 weeks, and I didn't really breastfeed that much while I was there, so he was just kind of done and over with that. So now I just pump, and I give him the pumped milk along with formula, and the guilt is still there a little bit, but because I'm pumping, I feel better. I feel like a part of my journey got kind of taken, sure. But he's happy, he's healthy, and we're fine. So there's that with postpartum. And then, so when I was pregnant, there's like a real word for this, you guys, but I don't even remember, and I'm not even gonna try to remember. I had a lot of pubic bone pain, so I just anticipated once he was here that would kind of go away, and after rehabbing my pelvic floor for a little bit, like, that would just go away, right? Well, it didn't. And so I started to work out, or tried to anyways, before I was allowed, but like, I felt amazing. But there's still certain moves that irritate my pubic bone. So I am going to be going to, it's weird, pelvic floor physical therapy once I can kind of get a better idea of what my schedule is going to look like, and not my schedule, my boyfriend schedule and where I can kind of get some help to watch him so I can go do that for an hour a day. Fun things. The crying after, like, you have a baby, like the emotional roller coaster. I think I had probably a lot more emotion than a lot of women because I have a colic baby. We struggled so hard in the beginning with him just like being dehydrated, having to go to the ER, constant doctor's appointments because his jaundice was so bad, and all these things that kind of go hand in hand, and then the colic and the crying all day and no sleeping, and I think I had it pretty rough, and that's where a lot of like the crying and the emotions came from. But I don't think I've had postpartum depression. Maybe baby blues a little bit, but I think for the most part I did pretty okay. Came out unscathed. And now he's 4 months old, and it's a whole new battle of the fourth leap, which is where they start to put movements together and they can see farther and all these things. So sleep at night is amazing. He's actually been asleep for over 2 hours now, so I can't say it's been terrible, but he still sometimes just takes these shitty little 20 to 30 minute naps, and usually that's our whole day. Like, it's just every 2 hours, a 20-minute nap, and those are the days where I feel defeated and I can't get anything done. And we still do have days where he just cries, and he's just a brat, and we work through it. You know, I've gotten to a point where I'm less triggered and less stressed out when he cries. Before, if he cried, I would have to fix it. I would have to figure out how to get him to be okay. And sometimes there's nothing you can do. And I had finally, after 4 months, come to terms with that. So sometimes when he cries, I just have to, you know, do the best I can to console him, or do the things I know that make him feel better usually. And if that doesn't work, I still cuddle and love him through it, but it is what it is, you know? Sometimes I set him down to go make him a bottle or get something done, pick something up, and he just loses his shit. And you know what? You're gonna sit right there and lose your shit until I finish your bottle or I pick this up or whatever the case is, because I've learned that he's gonna be okay with crying, and I do not let him cry for long. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, just let him cry, like the older generation. To me, that's too much for my well-being, so I can't. But those are the things that I've dealt with postpartum thus far. We'll see if we get a 4-month sleep regression, and you guys will hear all about that. But that's kind of where I'm at, what I wanted to share with you. If you're a first-time parent and you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, angry, because postpartum rage is a thing, get help, reach out. I'm always here to talk. You are not alone. Having a kid does some shit to you, and not only to the mother, but to the father as well. It's a complete life-changing for men. I feel like you don't have to deal with a lot of the shit during pregnancy, so it's almost like not totally real to you, and then once they're here, it's like a complete shock. So you're not alone if you're feeling some type of way, and please, for the love of God, reach out to someone if you are struggling.